You look at a cup of coffee. You see a cup of coffee. But what if when you looked at a cup of coffee, your eyes sent signals to the auditory center of your brain? Not only would you see the coffee, you'd start hearing things too. How distracting.
Now imagine how confusing an entire city would be with all of this overlapping sensory information. Well, this might actually happen if we didn't have synaptic pruning.
What is synaptic pruning?
Inside your brain, there are interconnected groups of neurons called neural networks. The neurons communicate through synapses. Let's look under a microscope. Scientists are able to isolate brain cells in a dish and observe them over time moving and communicating with one another. The synapse is where this communication happens. When you are a baby, you have a lot of these synapses. In fact, you have too many. As you develop into adulthood, your brain has to prune away the weaker synapses in order to function efficiently. This is what we call synaptic pruning.
Now, let's imagine your brain as a densely populated city with billions of buildings, each one connected to every other with its own separate road. This city looks like your brain when you were a baby. Too many connections! In fact, this is what scientists call hyperconnectivity, and it is one chaotic place. This city needs some pruning.
But how do we know which synapses to get rid of and which to keep?
Imagine you're driving to school, trying to navigate these tiny separate roads. It would be difficult at first, but eventually you'd find the fastest route and take that path each day. Your friends see how fast you're getting to school and decide to follow you. Soon, all the kids in the neighborhood are taking the same road, and there is too much traffic. The city needs to widen and strengthen this road to move all the traffic along efficiently.
The brain does the same thing with synapses between neurons that are sending lots of messages back and forth. The more the pathway is used, the stronger the connection.
And what happens to all those tiny streets you no longer use to get to school? We don't need them anymore, so let's remove that asphalt. This is when synaptic pruning comes into play. Your brain adapts, removing the connections it isn't using anymore.
As the cells in your eyes send more and more messages to the visual processing center of your brain, those connections are strengthened. Meanwhile, the connections from your eyes to the auditory center of the brain are pruned away, so information from your eyes is processed only visually.
A big part of efficient synaptic pruning is keeping the proper balance. If not enough pruning occurs, the brain stays hyperconnected, as it was when you were a baby. This hyperconnectivity has been observed in some cases of autism, which could be related to the feeling of being overwhelmed when processing chaotic environments.
On the other hand, with too much pruning, communication within and between neural networks is disrupted. This results in impaired cognitive function, such as memory loss typically observed in Alzheimer's disease.
In a city with too much pruning, roadblocks pop up on your route to school, causing you to be late or making it impossible to get there. As it happens in the brain, this loss of synapses makes it hard to access memories and blocks certain paths of communication.
While the largest period of synaptic pruning is early in life, this process continues throughout adulthood. So keep learning and happy pruning. Did you know that each of our brains contains more than a quadrillion synapses? That's over 100,000 times the number of people on Earth. And just think, you have all these connections to thank for your brain's efficient processing.